All righty. Well, this is Dan over here. He's a structural engineer, and so we're doing a little bit of a series where we talk a little bit about contractors and what they do and how they're really important to the real estate industry. So, Dan, go ahead and talk a little bit about yourself and kind of give us about what you do.
Yeah, so my name is Dan Schrader. I am the owner of Schrader Engineering. Um, my company specializes in primarily in structural inspections, and most of that is in a real estate transaction. We additionally do some light design, load-bearing wall removal, post removal, and things of that nature. But as to the real estate side, yeah, I do an inspection of the structural elements of the home, particularly the foundation, the main supports in the home, the center beams that run down the house, the support columns, and things of that nature.
Awesome. How long have you been doing this for?
So I've been working as an engineer for about 10 years now. I have worked full time doing foundation inspections for about 3 years now. So I look at somewhere around 1,000 or 1,100 basements a year.
Holy smokes. That's a good,
Yeah,
that's a good amount. Yeah. So is
Yep.
it more just you, or do you have a crew that comes out, or how does that typically work?
Yeah, so it's me, and I have a colleague, Jack, who he works part-time. He's worked as a structural engineer for close to 40 years. And so he's working part-time. And so he'll do some design work, and he does typical a standard residential inspection as well. I try to keep him out of crawl spaces though.
Yeah.
No, I save the crawl spaces for myself.
Yeah, I don't know if I can even fit down in those things. All right. Well, so tell me a little bit about why you kind of got started doing the structural engineering, and how is it really your passion?
Yeah, so I've done a variety of things in the engineering space, including quite a bit of design, build, construction. And I actually have a degree in finance as well. And I initially wanted to get into the real estate space, more on the investor side. That was kind of the long-term goal. And I've kind of put that to the side for now, but I've always liked the real estate space. And I personally really enjoy the variety that I see. I don't really like being tied to a desk. That's a hard gig for me. So I enjoy the variety.
It's a hard gig for me too. I got to get out there and do stuff. I'm gonna go home
so
crazy.
I don't mind we talked before we started recording. It was cold and rainy yesterday. It's going to be really hot soon. And I don't mind I like the changes in the weather. I like all those, and even in crawl space, it's part of the adventure.
Yeah.
So
it's amazing what you'll find down there sometimes.
Variety, we go from, I get to see a lot of different stuff and talk to a lot of different people. There's times where I'll go from a $40,000 rundown abandoned house, and then I'll go to a $2.5 million house where the granite countertop in the center island may be worth what the house.
You kind of see all ends of the spectrum, it seems like there.
Yeah, so I really enjoy the variety, and I enjoy getting to meet a lot of new people. And I think that from a more technical standpoint, I really enjoy the investigation aspect. I pride myself on being able to pick up small clues and put pieces together to find out if there's an issue going on with the house or not. I mean, that particularly applies when you have a finished basement and you may not have a whole lot. You may not be able to see as much as I'd like, but I'll be able to kind of piece together clues, and I enjoy that part of it. So
yeah, I know you get to see. Yeah, I'm sure you've seen a whole lot of things. I'm not sure if anything really catches you by surprise anymore. So
there's I talk to a lot of other inspectors too. There is always something new. People that have been doing it for 30 years, you still see new stuff, because just over the years, people make their own repairs, and especially you get into older houses, and you see kind of makeshift repairs, and there's always something new.
Yeah, so
I'm not surprised that often, but
I imagine
stuff. Every week I'll see something new.
All right. So kind of describe why we really need a structural engineer inspection when you're kind of going through the home process, or at least the buying process.
Yeah, so there could be a variety of reasons. I mean, the basic reason is you want to make sure your foundation is sound, your center support, the structural members, which are the foundation, the center support columns, and your beams. Your center support beams are in good shape and are not going to cause issues down the road. So, there's a lot of foundation issues that, if caught relatively early, aren't all that expensive to repair, but if are neglected, or even if they're caught before they become an issue, that you can, there's some things you can do to prevent future issues that become expensive. So it's a maintenance item, just like a lot of other parts of the house, where it's something you want to be mindful of, from a repair perspective and a maintenance perspective.
Yeah. What would you deem like the crack size, or what type of crack it is? What would you deem it worthy enough to be fixed?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question, right? Or maybe it's like the $10,000 or $50,000 question,
Yeah.
depending on the house. The cracks, in particular in concrete, they can be pretty tricky. There's not really an exact rule of thumb on, once it cracks a certain width, you need to have it inspected. So there are crack patterns that I look for. A common example of a crack that you don't need to be concerned about is a thin crack that's on the form seam. The form seam is on a concrete foundation. About every 4 feet, you'll see vertical lines that run on the walls, and typically you may see little pieces of metal every foot or two, and it's called a form seam because it was created when they put the forms that hold the wet concrete in place while it dries.
Gotcha.
Really common location for a crack. Cracks off of windows are really common. Diagonal cracks are generally the most concerning. Horizontal cracks get everyone seems to be aware that horizontal cracks are a problem they need to watch out for. And that's true. You do need to be mindful. If you see a horizontal crack, that can be certainly indication that repairs are needed. But it's not actually the most common crack that I see that has an issue. The most common time that you see an issue is if you have 2 diagonal cracks on a wall that are running towards the corners. So if my frame of reference here, we'll see if this works. We're doing this in real time. But with my camera view, if you have cracks that run kind of like this, towards the corner when you're looking at a wall,
and that's more of a red flag.
That's a good indication that wall is pushing in. But there's not an exact width. There are times where I see big cracks that aren't actually a structural concern. But as a general rule of thumb, if the crack's bigger, it's more likely to be a concern.
Yeah. What as far as foundation issues outside the home, what can really cause a lot of those foundation issues?
Yeah, so I would say that a good 90% of my job is preaching water management. So functional gutters and functional downspouts are one of the best things you can do for your foundation. So you want your gutters to be free of debris and slope towards the downspout. Make sure they're adequately sized. And you want the downspouts to extend the water away. Water, we have expansive clay. So when the soil around your house gets oversaturated, it expands and it pushes on your foundation walls. And it can also push on your basement floor as well. But we call that heaving. And if you think about putting a glass bottle of water in your freezer, that ice is going to expand and it's going to put pressure on the bottle. So that soil has a similar effect. It can expand and puts pressure on the walls. So you want the gutters and downspouts are the most important thing. Then the slope of the grade is next. You want the grade to slope away from your house. And a simple way to think about it is if you put a ball at the side of your house, you want that ball to roll away from the house.
Gotcha.
But that's a huge part. And then actually talk about expansive clay. It's maybe more accurately called shrink swell soil. And that's because in the summertime, you actually want to water. because as it gets hot and dry, your soil that was here, it starts to shrink, and
Oh,
it can't hold as much weight. You'll start to
yeah.
get cracks, and that can allow faster paths for water to your foundation as well. So you actually want to water when it's hot and dry, and get the water away when you're having a lot of rain.
Gotcha. As far as what when you're replacing or not replace, but when you're more repairing the foundation goes, from the smallest aspect to the largest aspect, what do you typically see to fix the smaller stuff, and then when you get to the more of the damage or the bigger damage that's in the foundation?
Yeah, so there are two to and generally speaking, there are two types of foundation issues that need repair. You have lateral movement, which is the walls pushing in,
Hmm.
and that repair can be as simple as putting I-beam braces on the wall, and they're typically 350 or 400 a piece. So it's not nothing, but it's not a terribly expensive repair. So if a 40 or 45 foot back wall is pushing in and need braces, it may need 6 braces, so maybe a $2,500 repair. If that wall is pushed in 4 inches or more, we start to talk about excavating that wall and straightening it, or if it's a block wall, we're maybe talking about rebuilding it. So
Hmm.
that becomes more of a $10,000 to $15,000 type of repair. Um, and then there are times, we won't get too far into this. There are times where tieback, something called the tieback anchor, is the appropriate repair instead of a brace. And those tend to be more expensive. They're more in the $1,000, 1,200 a piece type of range. So in that back wall example I mentioned previously, instead of
Hmm.
6 braces, if you need 6 tiebacks, that may be more in a $6,000 to $7,000 type of repair. And that occurs when the opposite wall is a walkout. So if I'll flip the house around. If the front wall is pushing in and the back wall is just framed and it's a walkout basement, a lot of times you'll need a tieback anchor in that situation.
Gotcha.
So
Gotcha.
that's
Okay.
lateral movement. Vertical movement, lateral movement actually doesn't tend to affect the upstairs all that much until it really pushes in a long way. You won't often see stress in the upstairs. Vertical movement is what you associate with drywall cracks and doors sticking, windows sticking, and things of that nature. Um, the repair for that can be piers, where they actually dig down to the bottom of the foundation to strengthen the footing. The footing is what actually sits on the soil and supports the house.
Mm.
Um, Piers, I don't recommend piers all that often. They have their place, but I think people should be very diligent about. I think you at a minimum you want to get multiple opinions from foundation companies. Um, I I think it's beneficial to get an independent opinion, because I think there's a lot of misconceptions around when piers are actually necessary. And a lot of times, even if you've had some slope or even if you've had some settlement, piers are often still not necessary. They have their place, but you should just be careful about.
Hmm.
There are actually times when piers can cause additional issues. In addition to them being really expensive, they're $1,200 to $1,500 a piece, and and sometimes you can have as many as you need as many as 15 or 20 piers.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but that's an area where you should, before you cut that check for 15,000 or $20,000, you should really make sure that that's actually what is needed.
Okay.
Uh, it's very
Yeah.
common. It's very common that you don't actually need that repair, and making some improvements to the drainage, watering more regularly, and managing the soil are sufficient.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, I think we got a good amount there. I think we can definitely help our clients and buyers and sellers really kind of know as far as what needs to be fixed and what doesn't. And a little bit of some preventative stuff is really as far as some of that grading and really trying to control a lot of that water around the foundation I think that's really a huge thing. And I show buyers home. I kind of point out the grade of the soil as far as the backyard or the front of the house, and see which way it's pointing in towards the house, because that really plays in a huge factor of some dollar bills that can be spent later on down the road, or some stuff that's kind of hidden behind that drywall. So
Yeah, and I'll add one point to that. That is an important thing to look at, because you mentioned a lot of this obviously comes down to what is the cost? What is
Mhm.
the cost to make these repairs? Um, and sometimes it's important to think about what is the preventative cost too. Gutters are relatively cheap. To re-gutter a house is not, it's again, I mean, it's thousands of dollars, but good gutters are really beneficial to a house. But sometimes grading can be um, as expensive as a lot of foundation repairs, especially if there's already established landscaping.
Mhm.
Um, and so, moving the dirt around doesn't cost that much, but redoing all the landscaping, or, if it's some grading situations are challenging and you may need a retaining wall. And that can get pretty expensive too. So that's an important thing to look at as you evaluate a property.
Yeah, I totally agree. And so I appreciate you coming out and talking with us and doing this contractor series and with the Homefront team. So unless you have anything else, I think we're pretty much good.
All right. No, I appreciate you having me, Matthew.
Yeah, thanks.